The townspeople all knew the playground was haunted, ever since young Maddie had hanged herself from the jungle gym. She would have been a woman now, had she lived, with kids of her own. Instead, she hung around the playground, forever 19, taking another child to join her once in a while. The townspeople usually managed it so that Maddie would take the child of a family new to town. There weren't many newcomers. It was a dying post-industrial town, but every so often a family showed up, and sooner or later their child would be alone in the playground. Sweet Maddie, a popular babysitter when she was alive, would come to play with them, as she often played with children there. Later, the child would be found, fallen from the top of the jungle gym, a pool of blood congealing by their head, their small limbs twisted awry. The town offered sympathy and casseroles to the grieving families who would leave soon after, which was just as the town needed. They didn't like newcomers up in their business. Then the Mackenzies arrived in town. Strictly speaking, they were not newcomers. Mrs. Mackenzie's parental family had been prominent in that town, and she inherited the old family house. But Mrs. Mackenzie herself had left town and not returned since she was a small child. Maddie used to babysit her. And now, Mrs. Mackenzie was back. One chilly evening when the streets were quiet and the playground empty, she walked there, sat on low rungs of the jungle gym and waited. Soon Maddie joined, as young and vivacious as Mrs. Mackenzie remembered her. It felt odd because she was the adult now and had to tell Maddie what to do. "Maddie, please, you need to stop. I have small children now. I want them safe. You can't continue this." Maddie looked at her, her eyes burning. Only the marks around her neck betrayed she was dead. She put her hands on her stomach. "You were pregnant?" Maddie nodded, tears spilling from her burning eyes. "The father?" Maddie continued staring at her. "It was my dad, wasn't it?" Maddie nodded again. "He's dead, Maddie. Please, and you've taken so many children. Can't it be over?" Maddie shook her head so fiercely her tears splattered. Mrs. Mackenzie closed her eyes and then gasped. "He killed you, didn't he? He drugged you, carried you here, and hanged you. I remember I saw him carry you out, and the town covered up for him." Maddie sobbed loudly. The sighs and whispers of the children in the playground grew louder. Mrs. Mackenzie laid her hands on Maddie's shoulders. "I promise I will make the truth known. About you, my father, everything. And you, promise, you will leave? No more children?" Maddie stopped crying and nodded. Mrs. Mackenzie didn't wait any longer. She stood up and walked away from the playground.